New Hampshire is defying President Joe Biden. The Granite State announced on Wednesday January 23rd will be the date of its presidential primary after Biden and the Democratic National Committee's plans to give South Carolina the party's first primary contest. This move also sets up the second GOP contest of 2024, 8 days after the Iowa caucuses.
This comes as new polling from Yahoo and YouGov today finds more than half of Democrats said they want to see someone other than President Biden make a bid for the White House next year. The president is also trailing his chief challenger, Donald Trump, ever so slightly, 44% to 42%, though 9% of poll respondents were unsure of who they would vote for. Another 5% said they were not planning to vote at all. 42% of respondents said Trump's criminal charges were a bigger problem than Biden's age, while 41% said the opposite. 73% of Democrats said the president's age was a problem for them as well.
So we've seen time and time again.
Ooh, okay, so it is interesting to see that there are still a lot of people, as much as we talk about Biden's age, there are quite a few people who are similarly concerned about Donald Trump's indictments.
Yes, and that's not just vibes in the polls. It has been shown, frankly, in these election results. The midterms, as I've said many times on the show, were frankly a disaster for Republicans. The incumbent party, the Democrats, is typically the incumbent party does bad during that equivalent midterms historically. The inflation was a really big issue. The economy seemed, frankly, in worse shape than it is now.
At least voters definitely feel that way.
They were saying that,
yeah.
Yes. So we were expecting better news in the Senate and even better news in the House, even though Republicans did take back the House. And it was clear that in some of these swing states like Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, the candidate quality on the Republican side mattered. And that candidate quality was a problem because of Donald Trump's stolen election narrative being exerted on them.
Yeah, and I got to say, New Hampshire, right off the bat, was furious, not to anthropomorphize a state, but the people of New Hampshire, the representatives of New Hampshire were furious at this DNC state.
They demand the right to pick the next president. For some reason, this is a special ability Iowa and New Hampshire deserve that can't be taken away from them. It doesn't make any sense.
Whatever you think about the underlying merits of it, I think we can all agree that the DNC's choice to do this now was a cynical bid. And framing it as this is about diversity, we want South Carolina to go first because it's a more racially diverse state than New Hampshire, seemed to be bupkis. They know that South Carolina is a state where Joe Biden has historically done very well, where Jim Clyburn, who is going to throw his backing behind Joe Biden, and something like 60% of all South Carolina voters said that they voted for Joe Biden specifically because Jim Clyburn told them to. So it's a state that the DNC has much more control of over.
It's a favored state for Biden, and this is totally him trying to stack the deck. That is absolutely true. At the same time, it's also true that it's totally ridiculous and arbitrary that Iowa and New Hampshire have so much power over the nominating process because they get to go first every year, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And those states are so utterly unrepresentative. And Iowa, in particular, exerts actually a very negative influence. In my view, it depends what your policies are, but it forces, particularly on the Republican side, it forces a lot of deference to farm subsidies as policy that are not policies I support. I don't support any subsidies whatsoever under the sun in any circumstances. So it affects Republican policy a lot in a bad way, in an unhealthy way.
Well, I like this argument that New Hampshire State Secretary Scanlon made. He said that there is a different kind of diversity that you could care about, the fact that it's really easy to get on the ballot in New Hampshire, that there's some economic diversity there. He says it costs $1,000 to register as a presidential candidate in New Hampshire, and that fee can be waived under certain other requirements. So there's an accessibility argument that can be made. I think there's an argument that if you have smaller states go first, if you are a lesser-known candidate, then you can glad hand and shake hands and try to make yourself known and get national attention that had been denied to you once you win that state. And I do think, we got to say, there are a number of people in this race right now challenging Joe Biden that are very much hoping for that to be the case. If you look at New Hampshire polls, Marianne Williamson's been spending a lot of time in the state. So far, a plurality of Democratic voters, 44%, are still undecided in New Hampshire, while 27% plan to write in Joe Biden, 15% plan to vote for Dean Phillips.
Because he's not even on the ballot. He's not even trying that.
No, yeah. but he still could win, according to this. 15% plan to vote for Dean Phillips. He's got a lot of money in this. He's one of these multimillionaire billionaires who's self-financing their campaign. And Marianne Williamson's at 10%, 5% say they would vote for somebody else. So that, you might want to see better numbers from the non-Biden candidates in the state, given that he's not even on the ballot. But there's still a whopping 44% of people who are undecided. Yeah, the problem is that it's hard to design a primary system or pick a state and have it be really fair to everyone. We could vote all on the same day. What an idea. Well, sure, but then actually that would not help the smaller candidates, right? No, it wouldn't. That's the problem. In some world, I think it might be ideal to do some kind of regional balance, or you have maybe four states go at the same time at the beginning and spread them out. But again, as you said, for these Marianne Williamson type people who want to concentrate in New Hampshire and then have a win there and catapult that to a bigger, to more prominence, that hurts them too. This is really hard to find It would have really helped the Bernie Sanders style candidate in 2020 if all of the primary states had voted at the same time. Someone like Pete Buttigieg only became a sort of plausible reality because he managed to eke out an arguable win that's still hotly debated in Bernie circles. They're still counting that one. They're still counting that. What a disaster. Truly. That was embarrassing. And then states like California, which were huge wins for Bernie Sanders, ended up grayed out on the maps for a very long time for some weird technical reason. So when you looked at the maps forever, you see, oh, he's not doing really well anyway. Why should I even bother? And that has a really important psychic effect on these kinds of races. So I don't know exactly what to do about it, but I do think that much more attention is going to be paid to New Hampshire from this point on, given that there's some certainty around the fact that they are still not bending the knee. Moving ahead. I remember Michigan did something similar in, God, what year was that? I think that was 2000. It must have been when I was in college, so it must have been after 2000. It must have been approaching 2008, I think. They jumped the primary queue. And the RNC punished them, I believe, because I'm from Michigan. I was living in Michigan. I was at the University of Michigan at the time. I think it was actually the first column I think I'd ever written for the student newspaper was about that primary shift. Can't remember what I said about it. You can probably Google it somehow, and we can look. I probably had some opinion that makes no sense to me now. Baby Soave's first opinion. That was the beginning of my career as a journalist. I had no intentions to get into journalism until. So when I get into the time travel machine to go and make it so that you never. Oh no! I kid, of course. Oh, evil Briahna. What was that date again? You said 2008. I see. Yeah, and then you'll have to come, and then another version of you will come because things will turn out even worse, and you have to sit next to Ben Shapiro, and then you come to assassinate the earlier time-traveling Briahna. That's feels right. That's what's going to happen. We all know that's how it's going to go down. Well, that is as good a time as any to wrap the week for us here at Rising. We will be off tomorrow as our usual Friday co-hosts fill in. And we will be back next week. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the move, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't get caught in a time travel paradox and become your own great grandfather. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.